Hello, this is a discourse on the book Christ in You, and this is Angel Christchild joining you today. And I'd like to welcome my friend as well. And we'll be reading from the 7th lesson, part 1, Getting Understanding. So welcome, friend.
Yeah, welcome, Angel, and it's good to keep rolling along here with the 7th lesson.
Yes, it's a lucky one.
Yeah, we'd all be fortunate to have good understanding. That's the title of the lesson is Get Understanding, actually.
Yes, agreed. So would you like to read now, friend?
Sure. So it says, the more we know of God, the greater becomes our reverence and humility. The infinite and eternal wisdom has such exquisite order for every created being. The very stones and rocks are marvels of his goodness. Even the dewdrop obeys a law and fulfills the eternal purpose. As you evolve, you discern these higher laws and become in harmony with them. It is one of our most interesting studies to discover the wonderful and perfect laws of living on each plane.
Well, that's quite interesting. I actually wanted to bring something up that was, actually I was going to, I interrupted you a bit early, I'm sorry. It was this sentence that I thought was important. Well, it all is, but if you could see the great interior worlds, you would almost worship your fellow human beings.
Mm.
And, it's interesting, the great interior worlds is the idea that jumped out at me because I read a near-death experience by a fellow named Daniel Brinkley, and he had a very detailed near-death experience. They actually wrote a book and made a movie of it. And the wonderful and perfect laws of living on each plane of the interior worlds, to me, infers that there is more. And we've talked about that a little bit, and we will continue to talk about that there's more in this afterlife than we bargained for or anybody really understands. So Dan spoke of his near-death experience in detail. He was actually dead for 3 days. So that was quite a long near-death experience. And in his experience, he observed a great deal, but he also observed great halls of education, and the souls were connecting to each other and learning in these great halls. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and maybe it would be a clue that there are great interior worlds, that we will meet our fellow human beings, and that would create a feeling of almost worshiping them.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an eye-opening thing. We think, oh, this must be the only thing. That's what we're accustomed to. And he's saying, oh, there's these whole different planes of existence and
Yes.
like orchestration and laws of living in each plane,
Mm-hmm.
and right down to the humblest, littlest stone and rock.
Right.
That's some kind of a marvel of creation, and there's exquisite order.
There is good order, but in A Course in Miracles too, I didn't take the time to look something up this week, but in this particular case, but A Course in Miracles doesn't teach that God created the world. It teaches that the ego created the world. So that's quite a big departure, and we'll probably come to that in another lesson. But it's quite a departure from the way the Bible and most spiritual teachings believe. It's quite different. So it can be very hard to accept at first, but once you think about it and think it through, it starts to make more sense. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. There is a Bible verse or two associated with this first paragraph.
Okay.
Specifically, that sentence that says, "As you evolve,
right,
you discern these higher laws and become in harmony with them." Regarding the word "evolve," a couple little Bible verses. It says in Proverbs 1-3, for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair. And then more in Proverbs here along that lines is, my son, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding.
Very good. And there's some more, there's further references there that I'm going to post those at the end of the video if people want to look those up. And also they're at the bottom of the page on 26.
Yeah.
Okay. So did you want to add anything else, or shall we keep reading?
Oh yeah, I mean, applying your heart to understanding, and not coincidentally, I guess that's the title of the lesson, is Get Understanding.
Right. Exactly. Very good.
So yeah, let's read along here. It is one of our most interesting studies to discover the wonderful and perfect laws of living on each plane. If you could see the great interior worlds, you would almost worship your fellow beings. God has endowed you richly. You have made mistakes because you have not known yourselves.
Actually, in A Course in Miracles, mistakes, sin is called a mistake. So in A Course in Miracles, it's not so much sin, but mistake. Quite a big difference, and we'll probably talk about that further into the book.
Okay, so interesting. Yeah, that's a kind of a different but good way of kind of seeing that.
I agree. It's a lot less serious than the sin.
Yeah. Maybe the sin is a lower consciousness, or a consciousness of separation. It's not.
That's exactly it. It's the mistake of believing that we're separated apart from God. That's the sin, the separation, which we have talked about before, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about again. So it goes on.
So it goes along here. It says the mighty eternal love is seeking expression everywhere. Oh, I thought that was a profound one too, because it's like whatever God is, maybe he divided into all these different appendages and sought to like know himself. Maybe that was why this all happened. And then, but then each little appendage was so intelligent and thought that maybe it was smarter than God, and it started to create its own belief that it was separate from God.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah. Although the Course, it doesn't spend a lot of time trying to decide how the separation happened, but yeah, it's the arrogance of the ego for sure.
I think now we're becoming aware of that, and getting our consciousness to a place where we see that we're not separate. So now it's like we're coming back to home. We're coming back to one, but now with our realization that, oh no, all along we were just yearning to come back to one, and through our current expression, even, and back to God, even when we go back home.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Actually, I just want to bring it back to page 26 because what you said just made me realize I missed a Course in Miracles information that I wanted to share. And that is fulfilling the eternal purpose on page 26, is about halfway down.
Uh-huh.
And in A Course in Miracles, it says, the only part of your mind that has reality is the part that links you still with God. And then it asks, would you have all of it transformed into a radiant message of God's love to share with all the lonely ones who have denied him? I thought that was pretty beautiful. And then it goes on to say in italics, God makes this possible. And another part goes, each effort is made on its behalf, is offered for the single purpose of releasing the guilt to the eternal glory of God and his creation. And that information comes from the text, the Circle of Atonement. So that's all about coming back to one and claiming our oneness and sharing the message with the parts of us that are lonely.
Mm.
Mm.
I think that's powerful, because I think that's what that last sentence is is communicating. It says the mighty eternal love is seeking expression everywhere, and I think it's kind of like a flower, grows towards the sun. It's like it is yearning to and seeking to go back home. If you think of the sun as like God in that analogy,
Right.
and maybe we're all yearning to grow up and in our own unique ways, our own unique expression of life, whether we be a person or a rock or a flower or a dewdrop. We are obeying some kind of a universal law and fulfilling an eternal purpose, and that mighty eternal love is seeking expression, and that expression is to come back to home, to come back to God, to come back to that oneness.
Come back to joining with God and joining with others.
Yeah.
So, and reaching out to others of the one mind to realize the at-one-ment or atonement. Actually, this pastor that I listened to, he's saying, realizing we're one in 2021. I thought that was pretty good. Realizing we're one in 2021. So shall we read on?
It only took 2,000 years.
That's all. So we're at, you ask.
Next paragraph, you ask, what is the most practical method of healing the body? Question mark. Our great teacher, Jesus Christ, always met the need of the people at their exact degree of unfoldment. Thus, some would need the clay or bathing, others the spoken word only. And there's a couple of good little verses here then for next to clay is the first one. And then next to spoken word is the second one. And so the first one, John 9:7 is go. He told him, wash in the pool of Siloam. This word means sent. So the man went and washed and came home seeing.
Wow. So he was blind before he washed in the pool. And then after Jesus sent him there, he regained his sight.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of metaphors there.
Yeah. And then there was Note 2 here, still other seed fell on good soil where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown.
Uh-huh. Interesting. Okay, well, A Course in Miracles has some interesting things to say, and I'll just let you read on a little bit more, and then we'll stop for that. Okay, so let's go on.
Oh, you know what? There's one more little good Bible
There's
verse
one more. Okay, great.
regarding the spoken word. I guess it's just making this the delineation that different people have different needs depending on their faith or their degree of unfoldment. The one person used the cleansing
Right.
pool,
Mhm.
but there was a Matthew 9:20 through 22. It says, just then a woman who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak. She said to herself, if I only touch this cloak, I will be healed. Jesus turned and saw her and said, take heart, daughter, your faith has healed you. And the woman was healed at that moment.
Wonderful. So the faith in her mind healed her.
She healed herself. Yeah,
Through
really.
her faith in Jesus and his healing.
Yeah.
Her mind accepted the healing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty critical right there. So could you please read on?
Yeah. And so it says, Jesus never failed to help in whatsoever condition or circumstance. That they came to him was enough.
Mm.
And this is where so many of your healers fail, either because they offer something beyond their power to realize, or because they employ methods that have become as words devoid of life.
So that's really interesting for me because I do verbal healing with people through their system. And what A Course in Miracles says about what the role of words in healing is unless specific references does occur to the mind in conjunction with the word has little or no practical meaning and thus cannot help the healing process. The prayer of the heart does not ask for concrete things. And that comes from what is the role of words in healing. And so I just wanted to say that the mind is the healer, and any method that doesn't include the mind and the soul is temporary and is ultimately devoid of meaning, any kind of meaning for meaningful healing. So,
Yeah, that's interesting. People sometimes will have a kind of a maybe more ego-based like perspective of like, oh, I can heal you. I have this, I have that, or I do this, I do that.
right.
I have the best thing or the best that.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it's about that person. What will that person have faith in? Because that person has the faith and the ability to heal by just touching somebody's coat if they believe that coat is
Right.
is holy or
Amazing, isn't it? Just amazing.
yeah.
That's how powerful your mind is connected to God. That's
Yeah.
what that is. That's you connecting your mind to God
Mm-hmm.
and accepting healing, basically.
So it goes on. It says the great healer, by reason of the greatness of his love, could meet every need, and only as you love can you really help. Love perceives as never man sees, suggesting with infinite variety the exact method.
Mm. So to me, that would suggest that love has ways of healing that we would not necessarily think of or even understand. And that for different needs, there's different methods, which makes a lot of sense to me because it's all based on emotions mainly.
Hmm.
So let's
Wow.
continue.
And there's a couple little good verses here regarding the great healer,
Mhm.
and then a verse regarding love. And so the first one talks about Matthew 8:16. When evening came, many who were demon possessed were brought to him, and he drove out the spirits with a word and healed all the sick.
Mm.
Talking about the great healer, Jesus.
Mhm.
And then the next sentence, there's a footnote regarding love, and it says in John 13:34, a new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another.
Wow. For those times, that was a really radical statement. It still is, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's still radical for us to love one another with all the war and strife and problems and political conflicts and just, it's a radical message. Love one another.
Yeah, but that's what we're saying basically, is that if Christ is within us, that's how people act when Christ is within them. They are perceiving things differently, and finding an infinite way, a variety of ways of expressing that or bringing that here.
Yeah,
Uh,
true.
that's why that sentence goes to that point. It says, "Love perceives as never man sees," suggesting with infinite variety the exact method.
Right.
And the book goes on here. It says, "We are anxious that you should not spoil the great and beautiful work by following any known method,
Mm.
but always by following your own loving spiritual instinct, taking no thought what you shall say. It shall be given to you in that hour."
So basically, they're saying that Jesus will give us the words that we need to say as we're standing there.
Yeah, and it's even got a Bible verse associated with it.
Mhm.
Matthew 10:19
Okay.
says, "But when they arrest you, do not worry what to say or how to say it. At that time, you'll be given what to say."
Mm. I think that was directed at Jesus before
Yeah,
his crucifixion.
yeah.
Hmm.
And it rolls on to say, "Love with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and nothing is impossible to you."
Mm.
Hmm. There's a pretty good Bible verse there. There's a
Okay.
lot of verses on this lesson, but they're pretty good.
Yeah.
1 Corinthians 13. "If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding good, or a resounding gong, or a clanging cymbal.
Mm-hmm.
If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that I can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing."
Amen. Very nice. So it goes on to say that Jesus never failed to understand and recognize the perfect spiritual body in all men, meaning all people. So it goes on to say our body is perfect in spirit and substance in the real world, take it that they mean by substance. And that every part of the material body should act in obedience to the spiritual, the only real. So basically what they're saying here is that we need to have dominion, mind over body, that we allow our minds to heal our body and accept that as our role. And they'll be talking more about that in further on in the book. So in A Course in Miracles, it says, the one created by his Father is wholly self-encompassing and self-extending. And that's in a section called the Temple of the Holy Spirit. So the body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. And we are to take control and dominion over it through the workings of our mind and our faith. So
That's amazing. That we have that power and that faith within us, but we have to just accept that it's more about the love is what's real.
yes, and not the shadowy body, but the body of substance, as they call it, the perfect spiritual body.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, shall we go forward?
Yeah, so when the sense would indicate pain and disorder, remember your spiritual body and call it into manifestation by the word of power.
Mm-hmm.
The body should manifest wholeness, or you are surely making God seem a failure.
That makes me laugh because we know that God is not a failure. The failure is all ours. But yeah, it makes sense to be a good leader and a good example. We would be smart to show that our bodies can be kept healed and whole through faith in God, and that would be good leadership.
Very, very powerful stuff here. It's saying we can claim our wholeness to be manifest in our body with our faith essentially in God.
And our domination over our body through our mind. Obedience to the spiritual only.
So a couple of really good verses here. So for the sentence
Okay.
that ends word of power, number note 3 around the word says, for with God nothing shall be impossible. And then they were astonished at his doctrine, for his word was with power.
Mm-hmm.
So like you're saying, that was pretty powerful stuff that he was sharing in that time frame. That was really just opening the floodgates of like a new enlightened understanding to
Mm-hmm.
people who did not have that teaching coming to them.
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about time in history where Nero would take Christians and put them in a arena with wild animals, and people would think it was entertaining to watch them torn to pieces.
Yeah.
It just boggles my mind. Imagine how stark Jesus' message of love must seem to everybody when they were expecting to have a leader, a general, to lead them in war against the Romans, to take them out of slavery. I mean, it's just mind-boggling when you think about the times. So
It's probably why they were afraid of Jesus, because he was connecting with people, and people might have wanted him to be a king, or I think people did probably want him to take leadership of their country and
Absolutely.
free them from the Romans. And so the Romans had to squash that, right? So
Right.
yeah, Romans were very domineering.
To say the least.
But there is another Bible verse here that's regarding the body should manifest wholeness.
Mhm.
And it talks about Romans 8:2, because through Jesus Christ, the law of the Spirit who gives life has set you free from the law of sin and death. And for the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed.
Good. I think everybody's waiting for that even now. But it's revealed to us in different ways and different messages, like this book and others that we're talking about. So shall we continue?
Yeah. So it goes on and says, later on, when your body functions only from the plane of spirit, its uses will be finer, its obedience immediate. So it's saying we're on a path to express the plane of spirit, which is whole and healthy and
Yes.
pain free in our body, and that's a good thing. That's gonna be improving and that's gonna be good. So
Absolutely. Wholeness is God's will for us. Health is God's will for us.
and then the last paragraph here says the positive spiritual man will assert himself, refusing to recognize the suggestion of the sense man, and will become ruler.
So that sort of sums it up now. The positive spiritual part of us will stop accepting the rule of the sense man, or the ego, as it would be called in A Course in Miracles. And the spiritual self will become the ruler of the body. So in A Course in Miracles, we read, such is the world you see, a judgment on yourself made by you. This sickly picture of yourself is carefully preserved by the ego, that shadowy self that they talk about in Christ in you, whose image it is and which it loves and places outside you in the world. So it takes an image of you and places it outside in the illusionary world and makes it sick and vulnerable. And then the verse goes on, and to this world must you adjust as long as you believe this picture is outside you and has you at its mercy. So as long as we believe that this picture is being projected outside ourselves, or not even projected, but played out, it will have us at its mercy. But it's actually just a trick played by the ego. There is no illusion, there is no world, and there really isn't any illness. It's part of the illusion. And that comes from a section called the sin as an adjustment. Remember, sin in A Course in Miracles is a mistake, a separation from God, a mistaken separation.
A mistake we can basically bounce back from, and we're meant to bounce back from, and we're meant
Absolutely.
we're meant
Absolutely.
to realize this while we're here.
It's important to realize it while we're here, yes.
And so it does say then that Christ shall reign in you, and Satan will be under his feet. I think Satan is that consciousness that's separate. It's that lower consciousness.
Yes, Yes, A Course in Miracles calls it the ego. The ego is Satan, right?
So that's good that Christ will rise up within us and reign and fill, it says, fill the house every day with strong, positive health vibrations, lifting the very atmosphere into purity and truth. Growth into good is so simple, so natural, for God is working in your midst and cannot fail.
Very good.
There's one last Bible verse there regarding the word God. Note 2 says Psalm 74:12.
Mhm.
But God is my king from long ago. He brings salvation on the earth.
Thank God for that.
Thank God, yeah. I think the salvation is uplifting us from that ego, that lower level of consciousness, which we're calling Satan, which is really that ego. So it's really that realization that we're not separate from God. God is within us.
Mm-hmm.
God should reign in you.
And we're starting to see all the benefits that comes from that understanding. And
Yeah, we're meant to have a whole healthy life in our
to
body.
claim the power of that. Too many people that study A Course in Miracles don't understand that power, and they're not claiming it.
A lot of people in the world are probably suffering because they're not stepping into that true power and that true love and that true having Christ and spirit come from the source to really make them healthy, whole, happy.
Yes, true that. And it's time now for us to step into this realization and start to claim it for ourselves. It's a progression. It's time to make that progression. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me today, friend.
Yeah, thank you, Angel.
And thank you to our listeners as well for joining us. And we hope to be with you next week for lesson 8, which should be quite interesting, I think, as they all are. This one's From Glory to Glory. So I think that's a further expression of the ideas that we were speaking of today, by from glory to claiming your own glory as a spiritual being that's realized through Christ. So we'll talk to you then.
Yeah, good.
Bye now.